With less than 100 days until Utah begins their 2024 campaign, we're talking about what we're most looking forward to about the season, and Utah officially has one of their game times set. All that and more on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. We are available on all platforms, including YouTube and wherever you may get your podcast. If this is your first time listening to our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Closing at about 2,400 subscribers, so can't thank you guys enough for continuing to support this show. If you want to interact with me at all on social media, you can follow me at JT Wistricll, or our show is at Locked On Utes on X. My name is JT Wistricll, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined on today's show by Ryan McDonald of the DeseretNews.com. And first thing I do want to say is hope you all are enjoying a great long weekend, and our thoughts and prayers here go out to all of you who are celebrating Memorial Day with a heavy heart. We can't thank you, those of you enough who do continue to serve our country, those of you who have lost veterans that are still grappling with that every single day. So thoughts and prayers to all of you, and thank you for all of these who do serve and support this show at any time at all. On today's show, going to talk about Utah versus UCF. Want to close with some crazy recruiting news. But first, I want to talk about the fact that we are less than 100 days away from Utah football kicking off their season against Southern Utah, starting off 1-0. Sorry, Southern Utah, Spencer McLaughlin, voice of the Thunderbirds, but that is what we know is going to happen. And I just want to talk about what I'm most excited about for this season. And I think the biggest thing I'm most excited about is for Utah to make history. And when I say Utah make history, I'm talking about Utah making the college football playoff. Because of the way the format has changed, even if it hasn't, Utah would still have a chance with the talent they're returning. They have a shot to be one of the four best. But now that this format has changed and 12 teams can get in, with the amount of talent this roster has coming back, led by Cam Rising and elite defense and the coach that is Kyle Whittingham, I think they got a great shot, Ryan, to be the first team in Utah football history to make the college football playoff.
Completely agree with you. And I agree with exactly what you said about the whole top four thing as well. I think there maybe was a chance, even if it hadn't been expanded yet, for Utah to make it. And yeah, with it being 12 now, I think I would go so far as to say that it might be a disappointing season. I think
it would.
I know you're coming here being all excited about kickoff, but I do, in a way, think it might be a disappointment if they don't make the CFP, just because of, like you said, everything they have coming back and just everything they've built toward this year. I do think it would be a disappointment.
It would be. And I'll also say this too, for anyone who's listening to this and thinks, wow, that's insane to think that Utah would have been fine making the playoff, even if it was just four teams. Because I still see every once in a while in my comments, and I do read the comments and I do comment in them. For those of you guys who followed the show enough, you notice these things, who would be like, oh, Utah's going to come in and win the Big 12 right away. They were only beating up on teams in the Pac-12, or this is a Utah team that loses 4 to 5 games every year. Absolutely. Yes, has Utah lost some games? I'm not saying they haven't, but also, like, if you look at the context of those games they've lost, bowl games against some of the best brands in the sport, also missing some of their top players, that has to matter. And you know what else I care a lot more about than at the end of the season having 3 or 4 losses? Something all of those fans of the other Big 12 teams currently in the conference also know a lot about, having 3 to 4 losses every single season, is coming through when it matters most. And that's what this Utah team has continued to do with Kyle Whittingham and Cam Rising. Even last year, going 8-4 in the regular season with all those injuries they had. Are you kidding me? That was an incredible feat by this Utah team still. So I just think it's crazy to think that, and once again, I'll say this, if you're a 14 playoff format, you go 11-1 and you're a conference champion, you're in. Like, you don't miss the playoff if that's your format. The only precedent we had for that was Florida State, who literally had their offense in shambles because they lost Jordan Travis, and there was a drop-off in 20 points per game without him in there. So there was a tangible reason to not put them in the playoff. If you're a Utah team that has guys that have already won a conference championship, 2 of them, so many of the key contributors, still a part of this group, 11-1 is absolutely on the table for a Utah team who, in my opinion, will be playing in a weaker conference just based on the talent that is currently in it, not on the brands, but the talent itself. itself than what the Pac-12 was in its final year.
JT, I don't know if I've ever seen this fired up of a JT Wistricll in my life. I love it. I love it.
That's true. It's been a little bit since I've got that. Every once in a while, Ryan. Every once in a while. I'm always happy to be talking with you. So I'm in a good mood, but there are some things that get me just enough fired up, even on Memorial Day.
I love it. I love it. And I don't want to take anything away from what you just said, from your getting fired up just now. So I'll just say, yes, I agree with everything you said. No, I really do. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not guaranteeing it's going to happen. We're just saying, like, for some people to be like, that's ridiculous to think. Am I like, what, that's ridiculous to think guys that have already won a conference championship could do it when there are multiple other college football outlets outside of Locked On Utes that look at this schedule and go, oh, it's maybe one of the easier ones in college football that could potentially set them up for success. So yeah, I think that's crazy. But yeah, I'm really excited for this season. And I'll say something else too. Like, this is the Tour de France for Cam Rising, who is already one of the better quarterbacks in Utah football history. I did an episode on that earlier in the offseason with Mike Lagerschultz. If you look at Cam's all-time numbers, they're incredible. Cam is going to set records this fall. And I guess in some ways, some people may look and be like, well, he's been in college forever. But the truth is, he's only been a starter now this will be his third year as a starter. He had 2020. The season was taken out from him when he got hurt in that first game, of course. Last year, didn't get on the field at all. So, I mean, those numbers as only a 3-year guy are still going to look really impressive. And I'll also add this, Ryan, this is not inside information or anything, but with every season that goes by, like, there's another opportunity to, watch Kyle Whittingham out there and appreciate what he's done for the Utah football program, because he himself has said he's closer to the end than the beginning.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually was losing my train of thought a little bit with you're getting super excited. But in a way, I kind of think listen, people, I'm not saying I have any info that Kyle Whittingham is anywhere close to being done. I don't know. I do not know. But like you just said, he can't have too many years left in the tank. And I think this might be the best shot. Who knows how future years how future teams, the next 3, 4, 5, however many years he has coaching left, who knows how good those teams will be. But I think this team's going to be really, really good. And I think this is as good a shot as Kyle Whittingham is ever going to have of making the college football playoff.
All we're doing is reading the writing that is potentially on the walls if a year from now Kyle Whittingham decides to retire. Because I think for all of you listening who have been following this, you wouldn't be shocked to see Kyle Whittingham retire either. He mentioned, coach until 65. He's coming right up against that. And also, it makes sense to want to guide this team into their first year of Big 12 action rather than step away. And I'd want to coach Cam Rising another year if I was Kyle Whittingham. There's a core of players that I mentioned as a reason why I'm so high on this Utah team. That core of players, for the most part, that won those 2 conference championships, they will be departing the program after this year. There's a chance Kyle Whittingham continues to coach multiple seasons, but there's also a real chance and a probability for a guy who's talked about retirement potentially being on the table, this being his final season. And that's all we're doing as people who talk about Utah football on a pretty regular basis, reading the potential tea leaves that are there. It would make sense if that is what ended up happening. So it's going to be fun to keep an eye on that, and interesting and exciting just to see how all the news and everything that comes out about Utah football ahead of the season. Something we're excited to continue to talk about. Just like I'm fired up that we got a game time listed. Now, sure, it's all the way in November, which is over 6 months away until Utah's going to be taking on UCF, but want to talk about the significance of that game time being named in one moment. But first, I want to talk to you about one of the sponsors of today's episode of Locked On Utes. It's our friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride guaranteed every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers. Also want to remind you all that there's another opportunity for you guys to watch constant sports talk. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn the volume down with all the shouting. And you can now, there's an opportunity for you guys to head over and make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for your everyday to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channel apps. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Ryan, let's talk about actual football games that are coming up. We talked about our excitement. We got a game actually scheduled. Utah is going to be taking on UCF. I think the first time in program history. Would love for someone to chime in and tell me if I'm wrong there, but they're going to be taking them on at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So it'll be a late one out in Florida, like 8 p.m. start for that one, but that's all the way out in Orlando, and it's going to be Friday, November 29th. Now, let me say this before I talk about what excites me about this matchup, because I think Gus Malzahn, KJ Jefferson, they return their leading rushers, some of their top pass catchers. This could be a decent team this fall. I think this could be a fun game. If you want to talk about it, we're talking about Utah going 11-1. This would absolutely, if Utah wasn't to go 11-1, this is the exact type of game they could potentially stumble in, because you're on the road, which this Utah team has had some warts on in the past. And I do think there's a chance that this UCF team can surprise some teams after going 6-6 last season based on some of the talent they have. But unfortunately, I'm going to be a Debbie Downer here first. I just wish we weren't. I wish we were playing UCF at another time this season. Rivalry weekend, when this game is scheduled, is about rivalries. We just got done all those years in the Pac-12 pretending Colorado was a rival. And it sucks that Colorado, when they are taking steps to become a more prominent program, and I understand they only won 4 games last year, but Shedeur Sanders, Deion Sanders, all the lights and the glamour they bring, that game is a bigger deal. And the matter of fact is they took a step in the right direction, no matter how you want to slice it from what they were before they hired Deion. So even that game would have been more exciting. But more than anything, Ryan, I wanted to play BYU in rivalry weekend. That's what we get all fired up for. Ohio State versus Michigan State, or versus Michigan, excuse me. We get all fired up for Alabama versus Auburn. And instead it's Utah versus UCF. There's no tradition there, which is something we love about college football, and nothing personifies tradition like rivalry weekend. So I've ranted about this before, but to me, it's still a missed opportunity that Utah is going to be playing UCF in their final regular season game.
Yep. Like you said, the time for the game just came out, but it was determined quite a while ago that Utah and UCF would be playing on this week. And I think I tweeted, something like, nothing screams rivalry like Utah versus UCF. Like, I guess UCF and Colorado have the same colors. So maybe that's what they were going for. The whole gold and black, hey, let's just give them another gold and black team for that last game of the year. To try to pretend like it's a rivalry from however many hundreds of miles away Utah and Florida are. No, you're right. It should have been BYU, and it's sad that it's not. I hope that gets changed for 2026, 2025, and all seasons moving forward, because yes, Utah and BYU now being in the same conference, that needs to be the last game of the regular season. To your point about UCF, yeah, I think they're one of those programs that is trending upward. I like KJ Jefferson a lot, and just he maybe hasn't had the career that maybe some people thought he might, but I think he's still really good, and I think they're a really good team. Yeah, and that it is, from a matchup standpoint, I think it is an interesting last game of the season. Of course, depending on how everything shakes out in the 11, 12 weeks leading up to that, whatever. Yeah, I think you're right in saying if Utah goes into that game 11-0, little maybe a little nerve wracking, to see if they'll be 12-0 by the end of that day. But no, yeah, it's a weird matchup for the last game of the year, but it's fun. It's football. Football's
It is.
here. It's
It is
coming.
football. That's what excites us. You're absolutely right there. That's what we love about it. And, we look at the games on that day. So, you got Utah versus UCF is scheduled for 6 p.m. and just perusing the ESPN schedule that's been released. You got Nebraska versus Iowa. If you want to watch a lot of punts in that game and like a 6-3 game, by all means, you can go ahead and tune into that. The interesting thing is Oklahoma State does play Colorado. That is the most marquee game, is in for drawing eyeballs. So hopefully Utah does not play at the same time, because say what you want about Dion, once again, we know that he draws numbers, especially if Shedeur has the type of season I think he's capable of having. And I think he's very much has a shot to be the first overall pick in the next year's NFL draft. So this could be a big game for him, as I do expect this team to at least get bowl eligible next year. But if they're not, that would be his final game of his college career, more than likely. So there's not a lot of games in Utah's way that night. Outside of that, Texas State at South Alabama, Miami, Ohio, Bowling Green, Ball State, Ohio. Those are the only ones currently scheduled. There will be other ones that get moved over there. But in terms of drawing eyeballs, that's where this could be viable for Utah. That 6 p.m. time. So, even though this is such a non-like Utah football rant, but like even though Black Friday is no longer Black Friday, right? Like it's Thursday, it's Wednesday, it's every day. But for those who traditionally do want to go out and shop on Black Friday, when they are all done and tired shopping, they can come home, they'll be channel surfing, and they can turn on Utah versus UCF. So that's where I think this 6 p.m. Mountain start time could really benefit Utah.
Yeah, sure. Football. I did look up. It is Utah and UCF's first matchup ever.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I did look.
Thank you for making me look smart. I'm sure some of the viewers were doubting me, but I appreciate you having my back there.
Went on that little Google real quick while you were talking, and it will be. So that's fun. Like, yeah. I don't know if I'm unique in this, but I really like unique matchups. And I know that Utah UCF won't be unique after this season, because they will have played once. But yeah, like I think that's one of the reasons some of the lesser bowl games are fun. It's like, hey, some random team from the Big Ten play some random team from the SEC who they'd never would have played before, like, yeah, sure, this is fun, like, let's do it. And so I think that'll actually be one of the, throughout the whole season, not just Utah UCF, but just kind of throughout the season, is Utah playing some of these teams that they haven't really ever played before. I haven't looked too deeply into the schedule and how many times they've played everybody, but I've got to imagine there are more teams like UCF that in the Big 12 that they haven't played before. So, or at least have played very few times. So I think that'll be a fun aspect of this season for sure, is just getting different teams to play.
I absolutely agree. I think I'm excited for this game with UCF, like we kind of talked about. I mean, this is a UCF team. They averaged 31 points per game last year. They're going to add KJ Jefferson into the fold for that. So I think this offense could be, I expect them to average at least over 35 points per game. I think the offense won't be the problem. It's their defense. They got a lot to replace, and they got a lot of transfers. So how does that come together? I think is where it's going to be really interesting to see for this Gus Malzahn Golden Knights squad. But looking at this Utah's schedule on the season in general, this is easily one of the top 5 for me matchups that most excite me. I mean, off the top of my head, right? Oklahoma State, Arizona, BYU, Colorado. But then you get into the Iowa States, the UCF, those are TCU in there too. Like those are all the ones that are in that next tier for me, just off the top of my head. I'm doing this, that I think it's still going to be an exciting and fun matchup. Just one I didn't want to see on Thanksgiving weekend when all the biggest and best rivalries are going to play. But I agree. I think it is going to be a fun game, and I'm excited to see where Utah's at by that point in the season. Is everything on the table for them? Are they on the cusp of a chance to win the Big 12 and go on to the college football playoff? Or is it a disappointing season and they just missed out? And can they not go to the conference championship game? Like, it'll be interesting to see what the implications are come Thanksgiving, which still feels like a long time away, but we'll be here before we know it, thankfully, as the summer always seems to breeze by pretty quick. So gonna be interesting to see how Utah's matchup with UCF goes, and it's just exciting that we're getting game times. It is that reminder that we've been without Utah football since December, and we're getting close to having it back in August, which I'm fired up for. And something else I'm starting to get fired up for is the the future of Utah basketball, potentially. I know it's kind of a hot take based on some things that we've talked about on here in the past. Ryan, don't you give me that look. Let me have this optimistic moment, because Utah's kind of started making some moves. This started a few weeks ago when Utah signed Lauren Leith, who came over from Sacramento State. Shout out Big Sky. He was an assistant coach there, and he joined Craig Smith's staff. Obviously, Coach Smith has been losing a lot of different guys. Chris Burgess, Coach Slocum's also gone off. DeMarco Slocum, that is, has gone off to his new joined Washington, I believe it is. So he's on the move there too. So there's lots of been movements. You need to replace guys on your staff, and he hired Lauren Leith. And Leith has a lot of connections to some of the top players in the country from recruiting standpoints, and some of the histories and things he has dating back with them. So I thought this was a really good hire. And then I learned it was a great hire, because this is a guy who has those recruiting ties. And because of that, he's a guy who knows the top player in the country in AJ Dybantsa. And this is a guy who is incredibly athletic. I mean, I could tell you all the stats, but I just said he's the number one player in the country. So I think that goes to show you how good he is. So not only did Utah then offer AJ transferred to Utah Prep. There seems to be potential real smoke here. I'm not saying it's likely, but all these things kind of falling into a place of a guy Leith has ties to. Ryan, this is really interesting.
Yeah. I had to put my mic on mute.
You're good.
I've had a cold. Yeah, it's so Utah offered AJ Dybantsa a scholarship. And a couple of days ago, it was maybe Wednesday or something. And I was like, that's weird offering. Because I know his name as being top player in the country. He's going to be in the running to be the number one pick in the 2026 NBA draft. He's great. Excuse me. And so I was like, all right, sure. Because offering a scholarship, they offer, teams offer people kind of like candy in a sense, And so it's like, all right, cool, whatever. Offered him a scholarship. He's not coming to Utah. There's no way. All right, cool, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, then a couple days later, he announces, Dybantsa announces, I'm coming and playing at Utah Prep, and which is relocating from the Salt Lake area, kind of Harriman area, to southern Utah, to Hurricane near St. George. And yeah, then it's like, yeah, he's got these connections with Lauren Leith, on the AAU circuit. And it's like, I personally, yeah, like you said, there's a lot of smoke out there that I'm trying to clear, working on clearing, but yeah, it's like, why all this weird smoke is happening. And so I personally, at this point, May 26th, and this is coming out on May 27th, I think the odds of AJ Dybantsa actually ending up as a Utah running Ute are still pretty very low.
But they ain't zero.
But they ain't zero. Exactly. Yep. At this point, I would have told you when he got the offer, I would have said, yeah, the odds are still zero. Mm-hmm. But now with him coming to Utah Prep and with the connections with Lauren Leith, they ain't zero. You're telling me there's a chance, dummy number. That's exactly. That's, I think, where we're at now. So they ain't zero.
They ain't zero. That's all you can ask for. And I mean, with Leith, I mean, so the team he worked with for AAU is called the Oakland Soldiers. Here are some of the guys that have come out of the Oakland Soldiers, gone out to play in the NBA, and guys that Leith even worked with: Aaron Gordon, Stanley Johnson, Jalen Green, Zaire Williams, who are all top 10 NBA draft picks. That comes to us from your friends at the Deseret News. So that's the point where it's like, whoa, like they have a proven track record of producing guys. Leith had a close relationship with all these guys. AJ is one of them. Connections there. He's coming out to Utah, even though it's not in the Salt Lake area. There's a lot of interesting things, in the timing of it raises your eyebrow. Potentially writing on the walls. We'll wait and see how it all shakes out, but it'll be fun and something to monitor. And we'll continue to talk about this week. Lots of other things happening in the world of college football. So that will do it for our episode of Locked On Utes today. Ryan, thank you for joining us. Always great having you on, my friend.
Always great to be here. Appreciate you, man.
Make sure you check out Ryan's work at the Deseret News, and you can give him a follow on X at Ryan W. McDonald today. That's going to do it for our show, and we'll look forward to being back with you tomorrow. We will see you then.